Well, good evening, everyone. I think we can get started now. And welcome to the Forum on Homeless Prevention, sponsored by the Allewine Citizens Forum. My name is Joe Gardito, and I'm president of the Allewine Citizens Forum. A couple of announcements first before we get started. First, for your safety, if for any reason we have to evacuate this hall, the exits are in the back. We came through some of those doors, but there are exits on each side towards the back. There are no exits in the front, so take note, panelists, please. As far as restrooms are concerned, we go through the back doors and right or left, and then a women's restrooms. Now, normally, typically, the Allewine Citizens Forum presents 3 forums per year. And we're supported by member dues and donations, which provides that support to be able to put on the forums. And I was wondering, how many members do we have? By show of hands. Very good. Thank you very much for all your support and for your continued support to allow us to keep these presentations going. And for any non-members, so we solicit your membership. We're very interested in your support so we can continue this effort. And at the end of the forum, you can see any of the board members to get an application, and we'll be happy to have you on board. But thank you again to the members for your support. Now, I mentioned that we're able to present 3 forums a year, but as we, the board, look at the number of issues out there, a number of subjects that would be of interest to the community, we believe we really have an opportunity to offer more, but of course we're limited by our budget. So we have a new initiative this year, and that is to, in addition to the 3 forums that we usually provide, where we have video recording that we can later broadcast, we're going to start having mini forums. So we're going to offer several mini forums in addition. A mini forum is characterized by a smaller, low-cost, like no-cost, venue. There'll be no video recording, and instead of 6 panelists, we may only have 1 or 2 panelists. And the first mini forum will be fraud and scams. The panelist will be Lieutenant Kevin Higgins from the Orleans Police Department. And that will be at Snow Library on November 12th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're also changing a time slot to offer it to those people who find it a little more difficult to get out at night. So I hope to see all of you there. Now to tonight's program. You know, when the topic of homeless prevention was first mentioned to me by Herb Montgomery, one of the Orleans Citizens Forum's board members, I thought about the topic, and it just, the word homeless and Orleans or surrounding towns just doesn't seem to go together, doesn't seem very relevant, until Herb explained to me why that might be the case. And it's the case because there are a number of organizations that are working very diligently and tirelessly at trying to prevent homelessness. And 6 of those panel members, 6 of those organizations are represented tonight, and you're going to hear about what they do and some of their experiences. Now, our moderator for tonight will be Herb Montgomery, standing to my left right now. And I want to introduce him and give you an indication of what he does. He has a full-time job, but he also likes to support community service, so we'll go through that list. The first one is the Orleans Citizens Forum. Herb is a member and also our treasurer. He's for the Lower Cape Outreach Council. He's a board member. He's a finance committee member. He's an investment committee chairman. For the Homeless Prevention Council, he's their first vice president. For the Orleans Community Partnership, he is a founding member of the Nauset Rotary Club. He's past president and current treasurer. And for the town of Brewster, he's on the finance committee. He also has a full-time job. He owns a fee-only financial planning and investment advisory practice in Orleans, the Montgomery Financial Group. Herb and his wife Sue reside in Brewster since 1954. They raised 2 children. They now have 4 grandchildren, and everybody lives in Brewster. He's been summering in Brewster before 1954. before, so he's here a really long time. So please welcome our moderator, Herb Bennett.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming here tonight to view what I feel is a very important subject that needs to be brought out to the public. Our panelists are going to be detailing the role of preventing homelessness on the Lower and the Outer Cape. The positive outcomes through their collaboration with each other can only lead to a healthy community for all of us. Before I introduce the panelists, I'd just like to mention a few other groups in the communities who are doing a wonderful job working on keeping people housed in all of our communities. The Lower and Outer Cape towns all have community housing committees, local housing authorities who work hand in hand with these groups. Our town warrants support many nonprofits involved in helping with housing our friends and neighbors, and much more. The Cape and Islands Regional Network to address homelessness was convened by the Barnstable County Health and Human Services Department. Representatives for the Executive Committee from the region are the Duffy Health Center, Housing Assistance Corporation of Cape and the Islands, the Community Action Council of the Cape and the Islands, and our own Homeless Prevention Council right here in Orleans. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. Allison Alewine from Housing Assistance Corporation. She's going to give us a history of prevention programs, past and present. Larry Marsland, Executive Director of the Lower Cape Outreach Council, will be describing some of the wide range of needs in our community. Diane Casey Lee, Executive Director of the Council of Churches. She'll be talking about programs and their impact on the homeless and those that are at risk of homelessness. Abigail Chapman is representing the Community Development Partnership. She's the Director of Housing and Energy Efficiency Programs. Merrill Bloom is the Executive Director of NAMVETS, and he's going to talk about the growing need for housing our veterans and the work happening to do so. And finally, Christine Austin, the Executive Director of the Homeless Prevention Council. She'll be talking about the growing needs of at-risk families and singles on the Lower Cape. After the panelists have concluded their remarks, there'll be plenty of time for questions and discussion after their presentation. So, thank you very much. Allison?
Good evening. It's wonderful to see such a large crowd here. I have been with Housing Assistance Corporation for about 28 years. I am not officially with it right now. I retired, but I am continuing to work with Housing Assistance and with the community on the single issue of prevention. When I got into this business, and that's what it has become, in the mid-'80s, I was hired at Community Action Committee, I figured I might have a job for 5 years. 28 years later, here we are. We have made a lot of progress on Cape Cod. We do have several family shelters. We have shelters for individuals. But what we have found to be most successful here on the Cape is prevention. If we can prevent a family from becoming homeless, it will cost us, on average, $1,500. $1,500. If a family becomes homeless and goes into shelter, where that family is likely to stay a minimum of 3 months, it's $3,000 a month. A month. Then the state will throw in $4,000 to assist them to pay first, last, and security for housing. Those are your tax dollars at work, and mine. All of those are good and worthy programs. But the thing is, if we can prevent a family's becoming homeless in the first place, not only is it financially a better deal, it is a much better deal for the family, particularly, as you might imagine, for the children. There is not the disruption that occurs when a family falls into homelessness. And there is a spiraling effect with homelessness. It is not just a moment in time. It is something from which a family has to recover. And I keep using the term family. There's certainly individuals to which all of this or most of this also applies. But my primary field has been with families, so naturally that's what I'm going to talk most about. The Cape has always been a place that works together. Our agencies don't duplicate. We're not crawling all over each other for this grant or that state money. We have always worked together. We've always said, wait a minute, such and such needs to be done. Who among us can do that the best? Whether it's on the Upper Cape, the Lower Cape, the Mid Cape, whether it's housing or health or employment, all of which are interrelated in terms of this whole issue. We have always worked together. So when you use your volunteer time and dollars, I want you to know that that isn't, well, you're doing it in this pocket and somebody else is doing it in that pocket. How can each of us most affect preventing homelessness? You won't believe how easy it is. How many of you in this room eat? Some of you don't eat. I need to talk to you. In the back, you will find this little pamphlet, gift card program. By buying your groceries, or even your prescriptions, or your CVS and other kinds of shopping that you do on a regular basis, without spending one extra dime, no money, you don't spend a dime on this effort, but 5% or more of what you spend on the gift card comes back to prevent homelessness on the Cape. This brochure tells you where to buy them. If you buy them at the checkout at the store, it won't do us any good, so please don't do that. Buy them from one of the organizations, churches listed here, certainly including Homeless Prevention Council. You buy $100 worth of grocery certificates, you spend $100 on your groceries, no restrictions, buy anything you want. $100, we're going to get $5 back. Well, $5 isn't going to go very far, but if everybody in this room and everybody at your church and everybody at the Rotary and everybody at the Orleans Citizens Forum buys these on a regular basis, makes a huge difference. Many years ago, 20 to be pretty much exact, Bob Murray, whom most of you know or have heard of, came into our midst, and he began to organize ecumenical councils. And various ones, Harwich Ecumenical was the first, Chatham Ecumenical, Dennis Yarmouth Ecumenical, many ecumenical councils. And the various councils chose a way to deal with the housing needs, affordable housing needs on Cape Cod. In the Mid-Cape area, although it's called the Dennis Yarmouth Ecumenical Council for the Prevention of Homelessness, that money goes Cape-wide. If Chris calls me and says, I've got a family who, then I'm going to say, how much money do you need? And we're going to make that happen. And that happens because people are buying these gift cards. The reason I mention particularly Dennis Yarmouth Council is simply that they have been at this steadily for 20 years, and they have raised $1,300,000+. And they have prevented hundreds, I would venture to say thousands, but I didn't get all my figures today, of families from becoming homeless. And they did it on an average of $1,500 a family. Not a year, $1,500 period. People fall into homelessness because they're working a job that is an hourly job, and their kid has to miss school because they have the flu. They don't get paid. They can't pay the rent. They start falling behind. 1 month rent is hard enough to make up, but when you get behind more than a month, because not only did your child get sick and you missed 3 days of work, but the car needs a repair so you can get to work, and on it goes. But it's those little life instances that make the difference. And you can make that difference by simply buying your groceries. Please, let me count on everybody in this room and everybody you know doing that. That's how people raised over $1 million and are continuing to do it. Thank you. Larry?
My name is Larry Marsland. I'm the Executive Director of the Lower Cape Outreach Council. The council started in 1980 when parishioners of the Eastham United Methodist Church realized that there were people in their parish, in their town, who were having troubles making it through the winter. And so the Lower Cape Outreach Council began with one food pantry. 34 years later, and I have not been here for that whole ride, 34 years later, we sponsor food pantries in each of the 8 towns from Harwich to Provincetown. Sponsoring a pantry means that we have a central food warehouse in Orleans, and each of these pantries come to keep their shelves stocked. Additionally, we provide these pantries with gift cards each month for each client. They're only in $10 denominations, but they enable people who live on SNAP or who shop at food pantries to go and purchase some items that are otherwise unavailable, but essential to one's comfort in life. Finally, our food program, we have a monthly food distribution, which goes to our local councils on aging, WIC, and Cape Cod Children's Place. And then we add to this a community garden in the summer and a network of gardeners who got so enthused about what we were doing that they now turn all of their produce over to us too. So we're able to keep our pantry stocked with fresh produce quite effectively. Lower Cape Outreach Council is a short-term emergency assistance source. Unfortunately, the emergencies in the last few years seem to go on, and people are having a lot of difficulty. Last year, we gave out $1,406,000 worth of emergency food, clothing, and financial assistance. Over 600 of that was in emergency financial assistance, 700 for food. My colleague here talked about the little instances of every day. You know, you find a job, but you've been unemployed for 2 months. You have no one to take care of your child. You have no money to get the child in child care. Or you find a job, but the truck has a flat tire, or the transmission needs replacing. Or they're going to turn the utilities off. Or fuel assistance has run out and it's still January, for God's sakes. You know, it's a very difficult experience for people to be out of money and trying to survive. And our clients are largely the working poor. Additionally, they are senior citizens, they are children, and they are the disabled. One of our highest areas of expenditure, our impact on the homeless picture here, is that we try to help our clients remain in their homes as best we can, as best they can. To that end, we give financial assistance for a mortgage payment, a rent payment. We make collaborative arrangements with our colleagues when that amount of money is just beyond our soft limit of what we can give to one household. And then we support our clients in being able perhaps to catch up and go on by offering them food, by offering them help with budgeting, help with negotiating paybacks perhaps on utilities. We make sure that they're signed up for food assistance, that they're signed up for fuel assistance, that they're signed up for the health care that they're entitled to. We offer them fresh, thanks to a recent affiliation with career counseling, we offer them fresh job listings every Monday morning. We offer them the opportunities for job counseling, even skills training. In fact, what we're doing, we're supporting people in every way we can to keep their budgets as tight as they can and not spend anything they don't have to, so that they can stay in the home after we help them over that gap that has caused the emergency. Last year, that was to the tune of $252,000. And sadly, the numbers are up in every category. And we need all the help we can get. We need people to come and volunteer and work with us. Our food program is in need of people to help us. Not to run a food pantry, although that's a lovely option and you're welcome to it, but we have a food warehouse, we have trucking, we have delivery. We have a free clothing store at our 19 Brewster Cross headquarters, and that is very much in need of people to come in and volunteer and work certain shifts, a few hours a week, so that families can come in and get clothing and get bedding when they need that. Without volunteers, we can't be open. We need people to come and work with us in our constant quest to raise the funds we need to meet the needs of the record numbers of people who are turning to us. I head up our development committee. I welcome anyone who would come and work with us in that capacity. But there are so many capacities within our 350 volunteer organization. And we're located right there on 19 Brewster Crossroads in Orleans. We're open Monday through Friday from 9:30 to 3:30. And if you come by, I'll give you a tour and figure out how you can help us. And please, this holiday season, when you see the Gifts of Hope campaign every Friday in the Cape Codder, give, please. we really need to fund our coming year. And there's a long, cold winter ahead. And when folks run out of fuel, we're the place they're going to turn. So we really need your help in any way you can. Thank you.
I'm Diane Casey Lee. I'm director of the Cape Cod Council of Churches. The Cape Cod Council of Churches was established in 1956 as a consortium of Protestant churches across the Cape, and we now enjoy participation of the Roman Catholic churches across the Cape and the islands. Last year, we served over 6,500 people across the Cape, men, women, children, elders. And most of the donations came through grants and from the churches, for which we are very grateful. I'm going to tell you two stories. This is what Jesus did. He told stories, and I'm comfortable doing that. And the stories are from Jill Scalisi, who is our case manager, and for our Homeless Ministries Case Management Services. But first she starts by saying that it's very difficult to give an exact count of clients from the Lower Cape. Part of the challenge is that folks from the Lower Cape often move to the Mid-Cape and then before they become homeless. Then their last residence on record is Hyannis or Yarmouth instead of Orleans. And this is the example of a client who originally lived in Brewster. His ex-wife and son live in Brewster. When he lost his vehicle, he moved to Hyannis and found a room. He lived there for a while, then lost some of his work and ended up homeless. We helped him get housing at Homeless Not Hopeless, and after several months, he was able to move back to the Lower Cape. And this is very typical. In many instances, returning to the Lower Cape is a multi-step process. Most folks Jill has worked with from the Lower Cape have been motivated to return to the Lower Cape and have been patient and persistent in their quest to obtain housing on the Lower Cape. They usually have moved from homelessness into housing on the Mid-Cape and then moved on to housing on the Lower Cape. And when that happens, there's usually a collaboration between the Homeless Prevention Council, the Council of Churches Homeless Ministries, St. Vincent de Paul, and any other agency that we can pull in so we can cobble together enough funds to get the security first month and last. Very often we try to negotiate with the landlord to forget the last month's rent. It makes a huge difference considering the average rent is $1,000 to $1,200. Jill worked with a man named Joe about a year ago who lived in Provincetown for years. Joe loved Provincetown, and unfortunately, Joe lost his job and his housing, and he left Provincetown and moved in with a friend in the Hyannis area. Joe wasn't feeling well, couldn't find a job, and then needed to move out of his friend's place. He became homeless. Joe did not like Hyannis, had trouble getting along in large groups of people, and found the shelter, Noah Shelter, very difficult. He ended up in our Overnights of Hospitality program. We helped Joe apply for and receive mass health, emergency assistance, and social security disability. This is the key to helping men and women move from homelessness into a more permanent housing, is the case management. He can't do it or she can't do it on their own. We also worked with Joe to find a doctor to begin treatment for his medical issues, and he received mass health and cash assistance. We were able to access funds through an ESG grant from HAC, and my colleague can explain what those initials mean. And Joe moved into reconnect with a friend in Provincetown, received SSI, and moved back to Provincetown. Joe continues to come to Hyannis occasionally for important medical appointments. And when he does, he contacts Jill, and he talks about how he is doing. And Joe is very thankful to be back in Provincetown. And Joe would not be back in Provincetown without the help of many agencies in the Hyannis area and Homeless Prevention Council, and again, most important, the case management services provided by Jill. Jill would estimate that she has worked with over 125 clients from the Lower Cape. Some of them in the Overnights of Hospitality program, and some we've helped officially without being parts of the overnights. We never turn anybody away. Approximately 60 of those 125 clients were placed into more permanent housing. Only a few were placed directly to the Lower Cape. And Jill has worked with folks from every town on the Cape. Most of the folks from the Lower Cape are very independent and do not desire long-term support. But she still provides ongoing housing support services when they are housed so that they don't return to homelessness. We also have a street outreach worker who works on the streets around Hyannis, the greater Hyannis area. He goes into the camps, in the woods, abandoned boats, vehicles, and finds homeless men and women. I asked him for some numbers. I know the stories of these homeless men and women, but I was asked to get numbers. So here they are. Bob Lynch, he has 840 encounters a year with homeless men and women on the streets with 95 individuals. So those 95 he keeps seeing. And of those 95, we estimate 12 are from the lower or outer Cape. Folks are on the streets are very reluctant to engage with Bob when he first meets them. They are very shy of talking about themselves. They just want food, they want shelter, they want a blanket, they want a tent, and they want to be left alone. So Bob continues to engage these folks until they are willing to either go to detox, and he will drive them to detox, bring them to the psych center at Cape Cod Hospital or the emergency room, or get them into a shelter. We also have, as part of our program, a Hands of Hope Outreach Center in Harwich. And the numbers, again, were difficult to capture for folks in the lower Cape. Most of the folks are from Harwich, all the towns in Barnstable, Yarmouth, out to Mashpee. So I can't give you concrete, honest numbers about that. I do want to add that the Council of Churches provides goods and services, resources, without regard for religious affiliation or lack thereof. And we work closely with other agencies across the Cape and the islands to bring hope and comfort to the lost souls. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Abigail Chapman. I work for the Community Development Partnership located in Easttown. I'm the Director of Housing and Energy Efficiency Programs. The CDP owns about 66 rental units of affordable housing stretching from Harwich all the way out to Provincetown. On your flyer here it says that you can learn about shocking statistics, so I'm going to give you a few. All of these are from Paul Rachinskis from the Cape Cod Commission, by the way. In order for a wage earner to afford a fair market 2-bedroom apartment at $1,267 per month and only spend 30% of their wages on rent and utilities, that worker must work 40 hours per week and make $24.37 per hour. That's pretty high. Unfortunately, the average worker on the Cape only makes $8 an hour, which would require that same worker to afford that same apartment. He or she would have to work 122 hours in the week. Long week. Some more numbers. The wages on the Cape tend to be about 10% lower than the national average, and our housing costs are 30% higher. Another strike against families and even single people trying to make ends meet on the Cape. One of the reasons that the numbers are so heavy against renters is because of the seasonal economy. It affects the jobs and it affects our housing. A lot of the workers are competing with the seasonal work, with the seasonal economy, and are competing with people that make a higher salary in Boston, own a second home. I think we're all familiar with the shuffle. From winter to summer, everyone moves into the winter rental, and then everyone scrambles in the summer to try to find a place to live. And again, that's stressful on the families. People often wonder why it's so difficult, especially on the Outer Cape. There's a higher demand in the Outer Cape, it feels, for housing. The infrastructure on the Outer Cape, there's no town water, there's no town sewer. It makes it a lot harder to develop dense developments, which is what the state funders really want to see. They want to see us building 50-unit developments, and I think we all know that that doesn't fly with our local communities. In order to do a development of that size, you would need a 20-acre lot, which there's not many of those around out here either. One of the things that the CDP is working on to address the challenges that we're all talking about here is, again, we develop rental housing, we develop a small amount of home ownership as well. 100% of our developments are affordable to those who qualify for the income. One development we did in Harwich in 2010 was a LEED certified project. It's 12 units. It's extremely efficient. One thing that we're working on at the CDP is taking the knowledge that we learned from that development and applying it to our existing older structures. And we're retrofitting our existing units, adding insulation, solar panels, doing energy audits, educating our residents. All of this helps bring those monthly utilities down. One of our projects in Harwich where we did energy retrofit, the residents are saving 30% off of their heating bills right now. So, what else do I have? The other program that the CDP is working on is we partnered with Hetch in order to run the housing rehab program, which is available to income qualified home ownership properties. And we're able to work with those families in Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet, Dennis, and Harwich. And we can address some critical needs such as roofing, siding, windows. Projects go up to $35,000. And again, that's a deferred grant, so there's no cost to the owner of that property. We have done over $7 million worth of work to 150 homes in those towns that I mentioned. The CDP is also helping with economic development to help local residents find jobs, find year-round jobs, which again stabilizes their home life. We have a microloan program. We've over the past 18 years, we've done 150 microloans at $2.25 million. Some of our more famous recipients of that are Mac Seafood, Carew Restaurant, and Truro Vineyards all got their start with the microloan from the CDP. And again, those businesses also have year-round employment for local Outer Cape residents. We have worked with most of the organizations up here. We always stress to our residents, call us before you get in trouble, and we'll figure something out. If we can't figure out something in-house, we reach out to these other organizations, and we work to keep people in their homes at all costs. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Merrill Blum, and I am the Executive Director of the Non-Vets Association and the sister agency, which is the Veterans Outreach Center, which basically conducts the business and operations of the non-vets, and the recently acquired Grace Veterans Center in New Seabury, which is another story. How many of you people sitting here have ever worn a uniform, been in the service? Actually, it's a little bit high, thank you. Well, welcome home. We appreciate your service, and we thank you for serving our nation and our state. The number is fairly accurate about the number of veterans. There are about 22 million veterans in the United States still. There are about 338,000 in the state of Massachusetts. And on Cape Cod and the islands, there are about 26 or 27,000 veterans, half of which are over the age of 65. We still have approximately 3,000 Vietnam veterans living on the Cape. And we have about 1,500 Iraqi Afghani vets living here. What the Veterans Outreach Center seeks to do is to assist people who are homeless, which is why we're here tonight. Everyone that comes to us, let me digress for a moment. In 1993, the non-vets decided that they would do transitional housing. So we got together and did some work on a building, and we have 10 units of housing in one building, and in 2007 we added 7 more units of housing. And these are all SRO models, so there are 16 beds. We run about 92-93% year-round. Only time that number decreases is when we get a large volume of people moving through and they move to independent living, which is the ultimate goal of the program. Independent living with sustainable incomes and medical benefits. Everybody that comes into that program is homeless. And since '93, we've helped about 300 individuals, men and women, obtain housing and move to independent living and or be reunited with their families. As I say, every one of our individuals that comes to us are homeless. And in addition, most of them suffer from either dual diagnosis or substance abuse. 70% of all veterans that are involved with substance abuse, their drug of choice is alcohol. I can count the number of drug addicts that we've had in the program over the years, and it's not very, very many. It's maybe 3 or 4 or 5, and they kind of do themselves in real quickly. Everybody is assigned a case manager in the intake process, where we do an individual service plan so that we know what they say that they want to do, and review that. We review that on a weekly basis with them to see that they're making progress. At the end of a year, if they're not making progress, then we don't want them to feel as if they're getting a paid vacation. So they have to be moving forward. And what happens is that we will seek to move them to a place where they can get, if we're not helping them, we'll seek to move them to a place where they can get help. And we take the responsibility saying that we did not do our job. And how can we best help them? A couple of things that have helped us recently are the VASH program, which is a Veterans Administration's supportive housing. It's a Section 8 voucher strictly for veterans. HAC is the dispensing agency for that, and we've worked with HAC over the last 4 or 5 years with that program. It has basically reduced housing in the United States for veterans by 60 or 70% since 2005. The stated goal is to do away with veterans homelessness by the year 2015. A very lofty goal. Whether it's obtainable or not, the reality is something else. I'm not sure that it's going to happen in 2015, but we can try like hell, if you pardon the expression. And we're doing a good job at it. This year we ran at about 125% of performance measured, principally due to VASH. We currently have 3 individuals in our program that have VASH vouchers that are looking for housing. Another interesting little statistic along the way. We have 16 residents. 4 of them are cancer patients. 1 of them is terminal. It's end of life. Another one is a veteran from Afghanistan and are currently undergoing chemotherapy. and the other 2 have prostate cancer and are in treatment as well. But that's an extraordinarily high percentage for 16 residents in one location. So the other thing that's helped us recently, quite recently, is that we have partnered with Volunteers for America on the Supportive Services for Veterans Family Grant. We're going to spend $180,000 on the Cape to get people back into housing, and if they're chronically homeless, to get housing. And it's a shallow subsidy which will provide up to 5 months of rental payments and up to 90 to 120 days of case management. Taken as a whole, we have probably 100, 125 or so homeless veterans on the Cape. Problem is that they always backfill when they get housed, because why? We're a destination. So people get housed or they leave the Cape, but we always get people back in return. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Chris Austin. I'm with the Homeless Prevention Council. I've worked in this particular field of helping people on this end of the Cape my entire career, which is over 35 years. I spent the last 21 years working with Homeless Prevention Council. When they started Homeless Prevention Council 21 years ago, they never thought they'd be in business today, because their lofty goal was to take and end homelessness and to prevent any other homelessness to occur. And they wanted to do this right from the day they opened the door with professional case management. They felt that the case management was the missing piece in all of the problems. That although that we had wonderful donors and we had wonderful, generous agencies who were willing to take and work, we needed somebody to take and help them navigate this maze, this morass, this bureaucracy, from the can haves and the ones that can't haves. It's a lot of hard work, and it isn't pretty. And it's tough love on every day. And it's hard to have tough love with people who think they've already been kicked and, knocked down. So, although I don't want your eyes to glaze over, I have to give you some statistics. Remember, we cover Harwich to Provincetown. We've done this for 21 years. In 2012, we had 913 unduplicated cases. Of those 913 unduplicated cases, 855 children from 516 families. And as of September of 2013, we have a total of 648 cases with 324 families and 525 children in those families. And I'm pretty sure that we'll come close to at least what we did in 2012. Of those cases, at least 2/3 of them go forward for more than a year. And why do we do that? We do that because it works, because it's part of prevention. We do that because these people are working families. They're not eligible for any of these emergency assistance programs that you hear about, the shelter programs. Our people are always that certain percentage over. They could be $200, $300, $400 over shelter. It doesn't make any difference what their tragedy is, what it is for their needs. And I think that we're going to continue to see that kind of a gap as long as we see the economy going the way it is going. How do we take and help these people? We are available every day. We are open from 9 to 4. You can walk in. You have to take and do an intake. You have to be honest with us. You have to go through a budgeting process. We want all your bills. This is pretty tough stuff for a lot of people who consider themselves very independent. The goal is to take and make them feel safe. Make them feel safe enough to tell us some of the worst things that they think they can't possibly talk about. Maybe it's a credit card. Maybe it's the fact that this is their third marriage. Quite honestly, we really don't care about that part. And what we say to them after they tell us all of the horrible things that got them there is, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do with us? How are you going to let us go forward with you and help you? And we can't do this alone, and we don't do it alone.
Our case managers reach out every day. I can't even tell you how many times a day because I don't want to count myself. It would be staggering. To Lower Cape Outreach, to St. Vincent de Paul's. The Veteran Center is an ongoing, I think it's on automatic dial right now, because we don't know what we're doing, and we go to the people who do know what they're doing. And we want to learn how to take and help all of these people. There's a lot of tough love that goes into that, because they need help. They don't want help, they need help. But we're going to get them the help they need when we have partners like that sit at this particular table. So we get back to the shelter situation, and Allison touched on it a little bit about, with a little bit of help. And that's exactly what happens at Homeless Prevention Council. If you have a little bit of help, and if you can see that people pulling together to help you, to keep your kids in the school, keep you with your church family, your support system, they rally and they want to take and they want to help themselves, and they not only to help themselves, but they want to give back. What can I do to help you? Can I help with the Christmas program? But a little commercial for that. It's Adopt a Family. It's coming up in the next couple of weeks. If you haven't got your invitations to be a donor, please see Maureen. She's here, waving in the background. It's a fun program. It is donor-driven. If we don't have the donors, then we can't have the children adopted. And you have never let any of these children and their families down. Like I say, it's a really fun program. So if you, with a little bit of help, you get to take and stay out of that shelter, and you get to stay in your home, you become that person in the community that we all want to have. That person is probably your bank teller, and you don't even know it. It's probably the guy that comes and helps rakes the leaves and does all the other odd jobs. It's probably the mechanic that fixes your car. We just take these things for granted. I know I have taken these things for granted over the years. How about the fishermen? The fishermen. They are part of our heritage here. That's part of why many of us live on Cape Cod. We wanted to be part of that community. Our fishermen are in dire straits, our shell fishermen. I can't speak to all of the particular laws that have gone against these fishermen. I have a case manager, Maggie Flanagan, who is very, very, very adept at helping these fishermen go forward and try to get what it is that they need for their licensing. We apply for different funds through grants to take and help our people. We do not accept any federal or state monies. We don't apply for them either. If we need this money, we will access it through our partners. If it's Housing Assistance Corporation, what's money's called RAFT, that's how we will do that. If we have people who are struggling and are single and are homeless, we will refer them, if appropriate, to the Duffy Health Center for the chronically homeless for our singles. So we consistently try to take and find ways to take and help these people not only rebuild their financial status, but with their self-esteem. One of the things we talked about when we were putting this panel together was to take and do some anecdotal stories, but true stories. And I think that there was one that was really stuck out in the past 2 years that was really and truly really heartening. And we had a young family. We had been working with them for a very long time. And the child was not well. And he used to tell us that he just wanted a forever home. And he would come in and twirl around and break our hearts and, make us laugh and everything. And a good day at Homeless Prevention Council is when we find out that there's a habitat build or the CDP got another grant, and this happened, and we got these kids into one of these programs. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, most horrible thing that could have happened is this young family lost their child. I have never seen the community do so much ever without ever knowing anything that went on. We had Lower Cape Outreach, the Nauset Rotary Club, we had the St. Vincent de Paul's, we had pantries, we had just a countless amount of volunteers who wanted to know what they could do. We had the school system donating money. You know, it wasn't just to take and help this family, it was to give them the gift of time. Life happens at Homeless Prevention Council. That is not a unique story over how this community comes together. We're there not only for our families that need our help, we're there for this community to come in and say, how can we help and how can we keep this a healthy community? There's so much more that many of us could say tonight. There's so much more that we could take and make this more real to you, but we have a finite amount of time, and the lady in the front row waves. I encourage you to ask us questions tonight. I really and truly, we want your questions, not only because we want to help you understand, but because you help us understand the gaps that we're not filling. Thank you very much.
Well, we have two volunteers here with microphones. Going to be one on either side of the aisle, so we're going to alternate. Love to have your questions, your comments. While we're thinking of our questions, I just want to bring up a program that the Homeless Prevention Council uses for fundraising. It's very similar to the food card, but it involves your electricity. They've become an independent associate for Meridian Energy, which is an energy supplier, green energy. And you can switch over to Meridian Energy, get 50% of your load is considered renewable, pledge your meter to the Homeless Prevention Council, and they get a $10 bounty just for getting the meter, and then it's $2 a month as long as you become a customer. If anybody is interested in hearing more about this program, get a hold of me at my office. I run the program for the Homeless Prevention Council, or call Chris and they'll get you in touch with me. I see a young lady here who wants to ask a question.
Hi, I'm Kara Duff. I work at We Can in Harwichport. I want to thank you for this presentation tonight because I did not know about the gift cards. I'm really excited that that's something that my family and I can do. Well, my husband, he's the grocery shopper. But I wanted to speak for two reasons. One, I wanted to tell you all about We Can. We Can stands for Women Empowered Through Cape Area Networking. We're located in Harwichport. Our mission is to empower women to achieve lasting and positive change in their lives. And we do this through, we do four main things really. We do a ton of information and referral. We refer to a lot of agencies up on the stage. We also have our work support program. This is a program where we have volunteers who come in who are involved have extensive experience in human resources, life coaching, job coaching, and they will meet with people one-on-one to give them, some guidance in their employment search, whether they need help with resumes, cover letters, interview skills, how do my skills apply to a different job, just to try to help guide them. And I think of it as like a journey. And the reason I can speak about it is because I'm the program coordinator. I do a lot of, the setting up, but also I talk with people on the phone and hear what's going on. And oftentimes we have multiple issues presenting. I would say at least 50% of the calls are housing. And a lot of that comes from not having employment and an income. So this is what we can do. We also have our work support monthly. I certainly don't want to take up everybody's time, but we also have our legal services where we have attorneys who come in and volunteer their time and meet with participants one-on-one to give them guidance on their legal issues. We also have our financial empowerment program. But the other reason I really wanted to speak is because I was a single mom. I've been helped by HAC, Lower Cape Outreach, CDP. I lived at Fred Bellway. I've been a Homeless Prevention Council has a file on me. And now I'm a homeowner in Brewster and a vibrant part of the community. So, and I work at We Can, which is to me the most amazing place to be. But it just makes such a difference to have the help that's out there, because, you know, things come up and you may not have had a plan, but when you have the support and the guidance of, you know, the people on stage and their colleagues, and you have a supportive, engaged, involved community, that's how we have stronger communities and stronger families. So I thank you very much.
Anybody on this side of the aisle that has a comment or a question?
Hi, I'm familiar with Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
And I've had help before myself, and I'm a self-employed electrical contractor, believe it or not. Through the economy, I had a devastating loss of jobs. Laid off my men for 2 or 3 years. And now I really can't even rehire because it's so expensive with workman's comp. Not just workman's comp, but unemployment compensation goes way up. Everything makes it so we can't recover. Yeah, we can't recover where we like back into our businesses again. You know, a small company. But more than that, there's others that are doing, and like you've been out to the streets. Diane, or your caseworkers out there. We have in our church, we actually go out and bring food to the homeless. In the Cape Assembly of God, we have a thing called Diamonds in the Rough Ministry. And we reach out and we go get bread from Stop and Shop. There's other ministries, other people do this in the community, but unsung heroes that are out doing the work in the trenches after workers. It's not maybe network, but it seems almost like that there should be more networking going on with the food feeding. It's actually a feeding ministry. We have several families now that are on a list to get food, and we deliver it. And I'm just a part of that. I'm not the leader of that ministry, but I get donuts to donate. I go to a Dunkin' Donuts and pick up the ones they're going to throw away, and they make it to the homeless. And that was just one parcel. But every one of us can partake in these things. The opportunities are there in the community, such as that. There's bread thrown away. There's donuts thrown away every day. Some do make it to like the Council on Agents and the different places around. Other churches reach out. But every one of us can take part, and not just with a food card. I've even done the food cards with Chris before. In every different aspect of this homelessness problem. And the biggest problem that I see, and being involved in the church, I'm a deacon there and have been involved with this, is that people, like you said, you can't get them. They're alcoholics. I was an alcoholic 30 years ago, but you have to really make friends. And they're very independent. And it's a lot of work to get these people out from the mess they're in. And Chris knows this very much. So I see that it's good to have the support group. There's also others that probably we need to network more. You know, it would be a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody over on this side?
First of all, thank you for all the information. As a member of a local church, my question to the panel is, what weekend contacts are available from your various organizations regarding individual and family homeless people that come to us on weekends, to churches, to businesses, not Monday through Friday, but on the weekends? Is there any contact information or plan that we can use as church members or whatever to assist these individuals who may just walk into a church and say, I'm homeless, I've been sleeping in the woods, where can I go to find a place on the Lower Cape?
There was a program called the Homeless Hotline, and it was managed by Community Action of the Cape and Islands. And it was very successful, and the Council of Churches took the responsibility of getting that emergency phone number, that 800 number, out to all the churches. And it was effective. There was a team, a collaboration of agencies. I believe Duffy Health Center and HAC, and every agency took a different week or time. the program was not financially supported, was an initiative of a group of agencies in the Hyannis area, but it was Cape-wide. Community Action could no longer sustain that project. The number is not active, and there needs to be a replacement for it. I meet with clergy all week, and just informally, we have advised clergy when that happens, when folks walk into the churches on the weekend, is to call the local police department, who can take the person, if necessary, to medical treatment. And then we will follow up. If the church calls us, depending on where the person lives, if I get a phone call, I may call Chris, may call Housing Assistance Corporation, so that the faith community reaches out to the other agencies. And
On the weekends?
Yes.
Can I also answer that, please? The Regional Network to Address Homelessness had taken that on as one of their great initiatives, and at that time, the governor had, it was probably, we received a little under $1 million, and so did 10 other regions. And that has always been one of the big problems, that if we sit down with anybody, whether it's a church, whether it's a homeless group, that is an ongoing problem. I know that over the years when Allison was in charge of the shelters, we would hear that families would walk into the Noah shelter looking for shelter, and that's for singles in Hyannis, and that the scramble was on to see what they could take and do for them, because obviously they couldn't go into that single shelter for the night. So one of the initiatives was this emergency hotline. Unfortunately, like all things in Massachusetts at this point, if I sound a little bit jaded, we got it up, we got it running, and it wasn't the perfect solution, but it was better than what we had. And Community Action tried to take and use some of their money. The Council of Churches tried to use what they had for their resources, and we couldn't get refunded again. And we weren't looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. The part that was costly is putting those people into a motel for the weekend. Then we had a process for a case manager to go to that motel in that area that morning before they were discharged, leave the motel, so that they weren't discharged to the streets. And, the county, Barnstable County Health and Human Services, they have tried to see how they could take and help us with this. And we quite honestly needed that state funding again. And we would be open to any suggestions over how we could, as the Cape and the Islands Regional Network, pick up that money again. It just hasn't been out there. But the need's still there.
I thank all of you for your description of the problem. For me, it's quite new because I just moved to Easttown. The question I have, looking at all the apparently representatives of non-governmental organizations, is what is the role of the towns in all of this?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Homeless Prevention Council cannot say enough about the human service groups that you have in your community. They take application every year for the town meeting for your warrant. I think with the exception of one town, they make visits to our 14 Old Tote Road, or they ask us to go there. I spend, and whoever I have with me, spend a lot of time talking to them just about their community. I have never seen such a group of people I didn't know in my life so interested in people that they just genuinely had a thirst to know what their needs were. Spent a lot of time in Wellfleet. Provincetown, they get into it so much that we have an outreach there every Thursday so that the people on the Outer Cape have a place to go, especially Provincetown. And Provincetown turned around, and besides their human services, they have allocated $20,000 for direct assistance down there. So that when our case manager, Maggie Flanagan, is working down there and she's trying to get the people you know, not only off the beaches where they're sleeping, but to keep them from returning to the beaches. They want to know about that. Their community housing, we meet with them at least 3 times a year. And it's like that in every town. Every town's a little bit different, but I have to tell you, they are very, very interested. And I can only hope, and I'm sure everybody here, is that they get the ear of the selectmen, because sometimes I'm not too sure how that is working. But it's important.
Anybody over here?
Good evening, I'm Jenny Snedeker from East Orleans, and I just wanted to ask about where the Wounded Warriors program, Mr. Blum, might fit in here. Probably Wounded Warriors on the Cape who come under your oversight. This may be duplication, I don't know. If it's something
Wounded Warriors is a terrific program until they are establishing their first office here in Massachusetts. It is in Cambridge. We are meeting with them next week to bring them, and they will be at the Gray Center when that is officially open, probably in the spring. But we'll be working with or affiliating with Wounded Warrior. It's a great program. Without going into too much about Grace, we are affiliating with some major hospitals also to bring services to the Cape as well from off Cape. Mindfulness programs, things like that, telemedicine, and a few other things we're working on at the moment. The Wounded Warrior is certainly going to be part of an approach that we're taking at Grace, which is it's alternative medicine program, holistic wellness approach to traumatic brain injury and PTSD. Does that answer your question, I hope?
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
There's a lady down there on the right.
Very bad.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Hi, I'm Beth Elbert. I'm the Director of Human Services for Barnstable County, and I just wanted to follow up on the question about what the towns do. And I wanted to just tell you a little bit about what the county does. But before I do that, I just wanted to say, you know, I've been on the Cape for 5.5 years, and the 6 agencies represented up at the head table just do an amazing job working together, collaborating, connecting, networking, you name it, you know, cobbling together funds. And I just can't say enough about how happy I am to be working with all of them in some capacity or another. So the county does convene the regional network to address homelessness, and the county does invest in a coordinator for that to kind of look at some regional things that the agencies can be working on, moving together on a common agenda, speaking with one voice around advocacy. So I just wanted to let people know the county is involved in the regional network and has convened it for the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I guess. Probably longer now, 4 years. So thank you.
I'd like to just add to that Beth has just brought up. I think we need to be very mindful of the big role that the county has taken, quite honestly, since Beth Albert came to the Health and Human Services arena in the county. And having that group come together on a regular basis and all the networking that is going on there is an extremely positive move for our community. And I need to recognize her role in that, and you need to know that networking makes all the difference.
If I could just add one more thing also. Just to elucidate a little bit more on the Wounded Warrior program and why we feel it has a place. And this kind of segues again to Beth and her suicide prevention council. The number of suicides of soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen in the United States are 22 a month. And of that number, number of all suicides, veterans make up 20% of all suicides in this country. That should not happen.
This lady's been waiting patiently.
That's fine. Hi, Chris. My name's Pat Cassidy, and I've been a volunteer in the past with Homeless Prevention Council. Cannot say enough about the wonderful work they do. Maureen has left the room, but I thought with the holidays coming up, maybe you could give a little pitch about the Adopt a Family program, just for anybody who may not have heard about it, who's in the room.
You talking about me?
I'm talking about
Hi, I'm Maureen Lenny, and I'm a case manager at the Homeless Prevention Council. And we do a wonderful Christmas program for our families on the Lower Cape. I have to take a breath. And it's a completely donor-driven program. And it started years ago with somebody coming in and asking how they could help this one family. And they went out and shopped for the family, and they didn't want the family to know. So it started with one family and one donor, and it has grown to, we have over 500 donors. I think last year we had over 300 children from 164 families. And we do for each child, shirt, pants, coat, slippers, and 2 special wishes. We don't do electronics. We encourage them to do bikes. We have a great bike fund for like $125. We can get a bike and a helmet for the kids. Roller skating, dance lessons, anything, reading, anything that is not electronic, we encourage them to do. It's a lot of fun. You can call up and say, I have a 5-year-old daughter. I want to adopt a 5-year-old. You get the child's name. And some people don't want to do the whole child. They just want to do presents. Some people believe Christmas is clothes. They do clothes. If you can't shop, you can send a donation. And I have a bunch of kids that shop for the teenagers that are really hard to shop for and don't get adopted out. And they tell me, because I used to shop for them, and my daughter told me I was no longer cool. So we've sucked in the teenagers, and they do the shopping, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great program, and it's completely donor-driven, and we can't do it without you. Did I get everything? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Is someone in the back of the room?
Hi, I'm Mary Little. I just wanted to introduce myself because I'm on the Orleans Human Services Advisory Committee. And each year we take in applications. We have about 15 agencies. It's pretty consistent what agencies apply every year. And it's kind of low-key. The voters in Orleans have supported us every year. It just kind of flies through, but I always like people to know that there are people reading these applications and taking it very seriously and knowing there's a great need out there for all these agencies. And if anything, I'd like to suggest to all the agencies they should ask for a little more money and see if we can get it.
I think I saw a hand up over here.
Yeah.
Did any of the agencies make home visits?
Yes.
Yes, they do. I know that at Homeless Prevention Council, we make home visits, but one of the groups that we really rely on goes out on a daily basis are our St. Vincent de Pauls. We love our St. Vincent de Paul volunteers. They are kind, they are generous, they don't go out and make people feel like they're ungodly or need to be converted. Because they're so gentle and because they go in and they bring food and words of wisdom, they are able to take and really get an eyeball on what's really going on in that family. They make a phone call that's not, all of a sudden a knock on the door. But partnering with the St. Vincent de Paul's, helping these families becomes less threatening to them. And then after they have the St. Vincent de Paul visit, they're more likely to open up more, tell more really what's going on. Maybe there's abuse in the family, maybe there's alcohol abuse. So we do make home visits. We don't make them on every client, it would be absolutely impossible. But we do make home visits.
Did you hear it?
Just to follow up on that, all families who have been in shelter on the Cape do have follow-up once they are housed for up to 18 months. I want to say that what Chris has talked about case management is the forgotten program, however, with the kind of follow-up that we really need to be doing, and that a Homeless Prevention Council has been a leader in doing for all of these years. We're spending an awful lot of money for families in shelter, and not enough, in my opinion, on follow-up and getting to those families before they enter shelter.
Good evening. My name is Al Alfano. The St. Vincent de Paul Society has been mentioned a number of times this evening by the panelists and some people in the audience. And the home visit is a critical part of what we do. I'm currently the president of the Cape and Islands District of St. Vincent de Paul, and formerly a Joan of Arc council. An important part of what we do is go into the home to try to assess the needs of our clients. We have 24-hour hotlines. While we're not in every parish on the Cape and Islands, out here on the Outer and Lower Cape, we have conferences at St. Peter's in Provincetown, Our Lady of Lourdes in Wellfleet, Joan of Arc in Orleans, Our Lady of the Cape in Brewster, Holy Trinity in Harwich, Holy Redeemer in Chatham. They all have 800 hotline numbers that could be called. Our goal is to return a call within the day to assess the need of the person, and then just a thank you to all of the agencies up here, because I know you sometimes come to us, but we are always going to you, all of the conferences, and there is a lot of collaboration, and there's a great need out here. There's also a great support network. We don't fulfill all the need, but we keep striving to get there. So I thank all of the panelists up here for all that you do to help some of the other agencies do what they do. Thank you.
I was just hoping that Allison could enlighten people about what happens when a family goes and applies for shelter now. The state, in its infinite wisdom, got rid of the prevention program and they created these diversion programs. So if you could explain diversion, the lack of case management, and what happens when that all falls apart. What happens to those families?
Well, let me just say that we on the Cape have proven that prevention works on Cape Cod. And in so doing, we have been able to give up shelter beds that we've never replaced. We have families in our shelters who are not from the Cape and Islands because the state needs more shelter beds. But the multiplicity of problems, of programs, I wonder if I made that mistake, of programs that have come out of the state, I'm sure they're well-intentioned, but sometimes I think these rules are made by what I call people in windowless rooms, because they're not people who sit at Homeless Prevention Council or Lower Cape Outreach or HAC or Council Churches or any of these places. Because the rule says you come to, you want to get into shelter, or you're homeless. Shelter is an option, but you have another option right now. And you know what happens when you go into shelter. And this is particularly true on the Lower Now Cape. Your people, you people, are very independent. And families will couch surf, will divide up, will do whatever they have to do not to have to go into shelter. But if they refuse shelter when it's offered, When they say, well, I don't need it, I've made another arrangement, I'm going to be able to stay with Aunt Mary for the next month. But once you refuse shelter, you're out. You refuse shelter, you're out for a year. If you go into shelter and you leave shelter and you find that what you have put in place isn't working, you can't go back to shelter for 2 years, for 24 months. This is another reason that prevention is such an important piece. The state's requirement around stabilization, which is case management once you leave shelter, is not what Maggie or Chris or I would call case management. The person is required, the case manager, to visit the family when they move into their new home. They are then required to call the family once a month for 6 months. Of course, that's not simple because you and I aren't always there to answer the phone. So, it's a lot of work to make a phone call that really doesn't tell you anything. If somebody calls you and said, "Are you paying your rent?" your answer is going to be yes, unless you're just looking for trouble. I mean, you're embarrassed, you're whatever. But then for the next 5 months, you get this phone call, and then the 6th month, you get a visit. At that point, things are lost. If things have been going downhill all that time, then the likelihood of being able to save that tenancy is poor. But remember, those people cannot go back into shelter for 24 months. So the rules are a little crazy when it comes to real people's real lives. Is that anything else, Maggie?
Does the state then count them as homeless?
I'm sorry?
If the family that got housed, then they fall into homelessness but can't get into shelter, are they counted by the state as homeless?
Not actually, because the state counts families in shelters and motels as homeless. Once a year we do the point-in-time count, and that's nationwide, same day, happens to be in the middle of winter for us. It's usually at the end of January. So we try, the point is to try to count everyone who's homeless. That's not possible. And the numbers that we get out of those counts do not reflect the reality. And certainly the folks that we're talking about here who have tried in a housing situation, failed for any number of reasons, would not be counted anywhere.
Anybody else? Down here on the left, Ed, all the way down.
My name is Alewine, and I'm brand new to the Cape. And my question may be somewhat tangential, but I'm wondering about the availability of housing for those with chronic and severe mental illness, people who need, like group homes, who can't, function in independent housing, and how that might interface with the homeless problem on Cape Cod.
I'm going to grab that one just as one comment, and what's been haunting me for the last 2 days is a 20-year-old who's pregnant, and our Bob Lynch, our street outreach worker, found her in the camps, and she has mental challenges, and we have tried everything. I tried Catholic Social Services, I tried DCF, wouldn't even take her in. She's not eligible for NOAA because she's pregnant. We tried to put her in a motel for 3 days. She burned her bridges at our motel. So we finally, hopefully, are going to be able to place her in a facility in Boston that will address her mental health needs and take care of her pregnancy and the baby after it's born.
I think that is one of the biggest issues we face in this whole arena. And 10 to 1, I know exactly who Diane is talking about, and that woman has been in a family shelter also. It's the saddest thing, and I don't want to blame any group or agency. I think the Department of Mental Health has maybe a job that's not doable. I'm not sure, but when adults say they don't need or don't want assistance, they just want a place to live. And as Diane pointed out, this person burned the bridges in the shelter for everything that we could do in the motel. It's a really, really tough thing. There is very little housing that is directly related to folks with mental illness.
Maggie?
This certainly isn't a cure-all for this issue, but there are these programs called Housing First that are designed for the difficult to house, chronically homeless. Usually it's for an individual, but these programs would work well for families as well. Anybody that's got a multitude of issues and is difficult to house, and the basis of it is you house the person first. I mean, everybody deserves decent housing. You don't let a dog die out in the street because it has the mange, so you don't let somebody die out in the street because they're alcoholic or they're mentally ill. So you get them housed first, and then you wrap the services around. So Housing First vouchers, because a lot of these people that would qualify for these programs are people that are extremely low income. Housing First voucher programs work because the person gets housed and gets wraparound support services, intensive case management, and these programs have found to be very successful around the country in dealing with chronically homeless individuals, and they would work with families as well. So it would be another way of spending money wisely to deal with the issue of homelessness, because the answer to homelessness is housing.
Yes, I'm Mary Pett. I've been involved in housing along with Chris for almost 20 years here on the Lower Cape. And as some of you may know, over the weekend we had another meeting on poverty on Cape Cod, which had a lot of similar connections as we've heard here tonight. But one of the main things that came out of that as to what we can do is to educate ourselves. And some of us who've been involved so long can still be surprised at the lack of knowledge that community members still have about these issues. So one thing, if you want to know what you could do, is to have this kind of program for your church or your organization or any group you belong to, for maybe some of your neighbors. Because I think understanding of all the implications of poverty and homelessness is the first step to a solution. So I would hope you'd consider that. And then as far as what you could do at your governmental level, your local level, support programs for rental housing. We have such limited rental housing here on the Lower Cape. So let your selectmen know that you support their efforts and the town's efforts to provide rental housing.
This wonderful town of Orleans, Brewster, Lower Cape. We don't see it here, but it is there. It's shocking. Thank you.
It is on in Orleans. I can tell a very brief story about a couple of years ago. There was a gentleman who was making a nuisance of himself in Orleans on the streets, and the shopkeepers called that the police were looking for him and they'd find him, but they couldn't find where he was living. They looked everywhere, boats, planes, trains, in the camps, around the bike path, and our street outreach worker went out on his own, and he looked up, and there was a tree house. So folks, and he wanted to stay in the tree house. He was self-sufficient. He did not have any mental health issues. He did not abuse any substances. It's just the way he wanted to live his life.
And we feel that as a society we need to protect him. And I don't know what happened to that gentleman. I'm sure he's still hanging around. And to respond to your question about, yes, there are camps primarily in the greater Hyannis area because that's where services are. And I mentioned 2 people who we worked with to get back home again. And the camps are all behind 132 down Betty's Pond, tucked away. They have tarps or they have regular camps, regular tents. And they have their own way of cooking and living. The young woman I mentioned who was pregnant is a victim of violence in one of those camps. And it's a way of life. It's the primary cause of people wanting to live in those camps is mental health. They can't quite understand why they have to change their lifestyle.
I'd also like to answer that too. When people ask me that, I say to them, not to take and say we are all the be-all and end-all here on the Cape. But when something like that comes up, no one turns a blind eye to that. I mean, about 2 years ago, we found out that there was somebody camping behind a liquor store in Harwich. And the case manager went out that day. It was in the newspaper, I think. And she got there, and sure enough, that's exactly what was going on. But these people had a plan. They weren't planning on staying there. Their plan was they were there while they were getting themselves together, and they were going to get out of there on their own. Giving them a chance to take control of their own life is always preferable than us imposing ourselves on them. I think the same person that Diane is talking about, that Maggie has been working with forever, finally set the treehouse on fire. I do know that he was taking shelter in the dugouts in the various communities where we have our summer baseball. And we also had a gentleman behind Shaw's who decided after his feet turned totally black from gangrene that maybe he needed help. You can't make this stuff up, but the thing is, you also can't make them come in out of the cold. Right now I have 2 vehicles behind our building. One is a senior woman waiting to take and get into senior housing. We have about 3 or 4 senior women living in their cars. They keep moving around. They come in, they'll take a shower, we'll hook them up with some food cards. We have a place for them to do their laundry. That's how we keep tabs and how we help them keep their dignity. But it's also how we help keep our streets on the lower outer Cape free from people who are going to be a distraction, who are going to be a detriment. But we respect those people before we call them a distraction or a detriment. And we work with them very, very, very closely. Provincetown is just, God bless Provincetown. It is generational poverty that hits that beach. And there is absolutely nothing Provincetown is ever going to do unless they fall right into the ocean. These people gravitate to the beaches, and sometimes there's mental health issues there, but sometimes it's a practice, and sometimes it's alcohol driven. Also, the other thing that happens on this end of the Cape is I can't tell you a week doesn't go by that one of us, any of us, will have somebody who has come back to the Cape because they have lived through a trying time in their life, and this is the last kind memory they had as a child, was when they vacationed on Cape Cod. So there's a lot of people that try to be homeless down here. We're too small, we're too narrow geographically for that to take and happen for very, very long. And that's a blessing for us at this point. I don't know about tides, but it's a blessing for us right now.
We have time for one more question. Is something else? Somebody out there?
I just wanted to, I forgot the most important part. I told you about this fabulous adoptive family program. And the reason why we do it is because in January, if we didn't help them with Christmas, they would make Christmas happen. And in January, they would come to us, Lower Cape Outreach. They would be at St. Vincent de Paul looking for help with their rent or their mortgage or their, whatever they need there to be paid. So if we make Christmas happen, then they can pay their bills and they can keep going. And it's such a small thing to keep them stable. Thank you.
Before we wrap up tonight, I'd just like to make a couple of points. It's obvious there's a recurring theme here that all of these agencies and the rest of the agencies throughout the Cape need your support, both financial and as from a volunteer standpoint. You can write a check and just mail it to them. You can participate in any of their different activities. Another one that I was thinking of comes up in usually the 1st of June, that the flyers go out for the Housing with Love walk. That walk raises around $250,000 a year. It goes to the different agencies that battle homelessness. So keep that in mind when you see those posters. You can sponsor a walker, you can walk yourself, you can just make a donation, whatever you'd like to do. But I'd like to thank all of you for being here this evening. I'd like to thank our panel. And hope you enjoy.
Pick up your gift card, brochures.